Hey, I'm Vipke. This is our team of soul volunteers for the INFONAVIT project. We're doing an analysis of the mortgage foreclosed portfolio of INFONAVIT, and working with us, but unfortunately I did not have photos of all of them, are Javier, Mariana, and Alejandra. So INFONAVIT is a Mexican organization. They are state-owned financing institution, and they effectively finance houses for low-income households with dedicated public funds. So within Mexican social security system, there are three main areas of focus. There's housing, healthcare, and retirement, and INFONAVIT has the budget and the mandate to look after the housing component. As an organization, because they're focused on low-income households, they take on effectively households with a high degree of risk, which means that a large portion of the mortgages they finance go into default. So currently they have a database of 1.47 million houses that are undergoing foreclosure. And currently those houses are still private property, but eventually they will belong to INFONAVIT once foreclosure is completed. So the questions that INFONAVIT wants answered is where the houses are that are undergoing foreclosure, what their characteristics are, what the characteristics of the neighborhoods in which the houses are, and ultimately also what the current property value is. We are at the moment in an early stage, very early stage. We just had the first call with a project partner, which means that we're still undergoing project scoping. The first steps are to do an elementary data analysis, so to do a geoplot of the properties that are undergoing foreclosure to get an idea of where they are located, and then to analyze the property characteristics as well as geographic trends. The issues that we are foreseeing at this stage is data quality. So INFONAVIT is not they get most of the data on the properties from a third party, that like a legal organization that deals with the foreclosures. Subsequently, there's quite a bit of missing data, and the housing addresses are to some extent unverified. So it's not a simple geographic plot by latitude and longitude. It's passing addresses and dealing with things like addresses. For example, if an address was assigned before the residential development was built, in some cases that can mean that that addresses change or not quite the same as they used to be. Why the project matters for INFONAVIT is because at present they have very limited information about their future housing stock. And having that insight is important because they would like to, so there are three main things. For one is they want to guide their decisions on what type of houses to finance. What's important to say also in light of today's topic of discussion is the intent of INFONAVIT is not to discriminate, or it's not so this information is not necessarily going to feed into credit scoring and choosing which people to finance, because INFONAVIT has a national mandate to finance low-income households. But it's more to take a look at which areas might be areas that people move out of or don't want to live in anymore. Then together with that would be to decide on programs on how they can improve the return of houses back into the market. So whether that ends up being neighborhood upgrades or some other form of support programs to support the houses re-entering the market. And then finally, they work quite closely with the Ministry of Urban Planning, and they would like to use this information also to inform Mexican policy decisions for urban planning. So that's it, and hopefully in the future we'll be able to give you some more information about the project, about the things that we found out, and about both the data science and the problem-solving approach.
Awesome, thanks Vipke. And actually, Javier is on the call right now from the INFONAVIT partner, and actually we have a Q&A question that says, who is INFONAVIT? So maybe Javier, you want to take that one?
So we're very excited about this collaboration with DSSG. I'll start by talking about INFONAVIT. So INFONAVIT was created in the 70s after this huge popular rising. And since then it has followed the mandate to give the Mexican workers a way, means to access decent housing. Since the 90s, we've become strictly a mortgage lending bank, so we don't build anymore. And what happens is that we are not federally funded, but we fund ourselves with so we have an independent taxing system. So 5% of all the Mexican salaries, so like are gathered in this huge bag that Infonavit controls. So we have 5% of Mexican salaries. So this is a huge institution, and it takes like it has so like its footprint on 75% of all mortgages given in Mexico. So it's sort of like a huge institution. But what this does is it alters the market, and it might create oversupplies, and it might create different incentives. So what we have now is this huge housing abandonment crisis in Mexico, and Infonavit doesn't really know like what its role is in this abandonment crisis. And possibly in parallel, we have this huge mortgage foreclosed portfolio that is not necessarily abandoned. It might be like the owners might still be living in them, or somebody else might be invading the houses. So we don't know how this plays into the abandonment crisis. And also the information that we have on our houses is very limited, because the technology has been growing stronger, but we have houses that were underwritten many years ago. So the data that we have on them is very poor, not consistent, and now we have a lot of housing in our hands, and we don't necessarily know where they are, like the exact location of them. And then how can you make a wise there are already programs in place to return these houses to the market, but the difficult part is to know which part of our portfolio belongs in which program.